Hi, I'm Randy, your round mound of podcasts, sound pound for pound, the best podcast around. Welcome to all the fun festivities and frivolity that this podcast has to offer. This is the Last Stop Podcast Shop. So let's drop it like it's hot right into the program.
Thank you, Paul, for that rousing introduction. I think you beat Cortana as far as being good. But right now we have some interesting restaurant signs. Let me bring those up here. First one we have is from Texas. It's the El Arroyo restaurant. It says, "Finally, all my winter fat is gone. Now I have spring rolls." And let's move on to the next one here. "I was addicted to the hokey pokey, but I turned myself around." Yeah, I don't know if that one should have made the cut, but this restaurant sign says, "Sorry, we will be closed for renovation from January 2010 to February 6th. We will reopen on the 7th of February 2010. Sorry for any incontinence." That's pretty good. And let's see what we got. The KFC. And a couple episodes ago, I talked about the couple that was selling golden tickets to heaven. And the guy, Tito, met Jesus behind the KFC to sell him the tickets and sell them for $99.99. Yeah, like Jesus has anything better to do but sell or give away tickets to heaven behind the KFC. But this KFC sign says uneatable feast, only $14.99. And let's move on to the next one. I think they do little stories. This one is the elephant in the restaurant. Sometimes a sign doesn't have to be relevant, but its restaurant is concerned. See what we did there? Yeah, very funny. Signs can just be a pun, the kind of joke that only dads tell. But we can't help but laugh at it anyway. It might not seem obvious, but you can tell if an eatery is worth trying out if they have some charm or a sense of humor. El Arroyo has both of these in abundance. In mammoth quantities, if you will. Anything unrelated to elephants is irrelevant. Yeah. Well, let's move on to the next one. Wendy's wants you. It seems like fast food chain Wendy's also doesn't take itself too seriously these days. Well, that is shown in some of their tweets. There was a time when working in these culinary institutions was held in much higher regard. Nowadays, there is a stereotype that only certain types of people work at these fast food joints. In fact, the stigma is also bleeding into restaurants in general. At least Wendy's are aware of this stereotype and are prepared to hire people who appreciate a little bit of sarcasm. On the Wendy's sign, it's underneath there it says, "Now hiring full-time losers." Well, they could probably get a lot of, I don't know if they're that much of a loser if they take the time to fill out an application there at Wendy's, but maybe they need a job desperately, and oh boy, that's a good one. Let's see what we have next here. Want some overtime? Many restaurants like to pride themselves in the fact that they stay open for 6 days of the week, maybe even every single day of the week. However, we have come across a restaurant that claims to be open for not 6, not 7, but 8 days of the week. Not only that, but they also manage to close every Sunday too. It appears that this restaurant has one more day in their week than others. It is called Not a Day. And the sign says open 8 days a week, close Sunday. And what do we got going on next here? Not exactly Soup. I watched the Soup on Netflix. And it's a pretty good show with Joel McHale. But on this restaurant sign, we only have 2 explanations for why this ended up happening. Either the first scenario is the cook who usually makes the soup of the day at this restaurant was sick that day. No one else could make soup quite like him, so they poured a few bottles of whiskey into a pot, heated it up, and served it. Or the second scenario, they have an awkward winning recipe for a whiskey soup that defies expectations. Because, let's face it, we're expecting the worst. The sign is on the sandwich board that folds out on the sidewalk, and it says, Soup of the Day, whiskey. Not even like whiskey with broccoli or whiskey with beef or just whiskey. So, let's see here. This is where your mind's blown. Not only are the writers of I can't say that. It's the same one. I hope this one's a little better. But welcome signs, masters of the cheeky pun as well as the silly dad jokes. They also like to delve into philosophy every once in a while. Many have come out of the Austin-based restaurants feeling like they have learned a thing or two. When you think about it, they are right. Clapping is a little bit like hitting yourself because you like something. Make sure you don't like it too much, though. Otherwise, you might break your wrist. Clapping is literally hitting yourself because you like something. That's true. It's an interesting sign there. Let's move on here, see what we got next. And this restaurant sign, why not good, cheap, and fast? This sign clearly demonstrates a problem with the fast food industry. Restaurants pride themselves on delivering their meals fast. They sometimes forget to maintain the quality of their food. It's safe to say that a lot of fast food is both fast and cheap. However, whether it is good or not is often up to debate. Why can't restaurants tick all these 3 boxes? To be honest, as long as the food is good, we don't care if it's cheap or fast. And we offer 3 kinds of service, good, cheap, and fast. You can only pick 2. Good service, cheap, won't be fast. Good service, fast, won't be cheap. Fast service, cheap, won't be good. It's pretty good. I don't know if I'd want to eat at that restaurant. I don't know if I'd want to eat at any of these restaurants, but looks like about the end of the restaurant deal here. But those were some hilarious. Well, some were not so hilarious, but some were pretty funny. Restaurant signs.
Okay, Randy, I think it's time to move on to another story.
Thank you, Zira. I think for 105 years old, you did that very well. You didn't sound like a day over 102. Okay, the next item up for bids on the podcast is right. This dude from Canada is selling $40 hot dog water to encourage critical thinking. It was an impressively elaborate troll. And you can see they got a picture of the bottles with a hot dog in it and water surrounding it. In a city best known for yoga, $15 juices, and inspirational Lululemon quotes, it's almost surprising that no one tried to sell $40 hot dog water to Vancouverites before now. Unfiltered, keto-compatible water containing a single beef hot dog was being sold for $37.99, $28.53 US dollars at an event in Vancouver last weekend, according to multiple media reports. The water looks like it was bottled in recycled Voss bottles based on photos posted to social media. This booth that sells unfiltered hot dog water is hands down the strangest thing at a car-free day, and I have no idea, literally none, as to whether it is real or an elaborate stunt. Mobius stripper, his nickname is, that wrote that. The troll behind the hot dog water, Douglas Bevins, is a performance artist and tour operator, the Canadian Press reports. We're helping people, empowering them to use informed decisions in their purchasing choices, Bevins told CP about his performance art. That is the message behind this. And advertising materials posted on Bevins stands at the June 17th Vancouver Main Street Car Free Festival includes support testimonials and a lengthy buzzword-filled explanation about the product. In the history section, it says hot dog water, in its absurdity, hopes to encourage critical thinking related to product marketing and the significant role it can play in our purchasing choices. He alleges that he sold about 60 liters of product. We'll believe someone actually drank this shit when we see the receipts. It seems worth noting that Nathan Fielder's from Vancouver. Maybe there's something in the hot dog water there. But that's an interesting story. Who would buy hot dog water? Now, if he had Johnsonville brats in there, maybe... Everybody loves a good Johnsonville brat. Hey, the Johnsons are cooking a Johnsonville brat. Let's all head down there. Remember those commercials? Way back when. And they show a guy dressed up like a hot dog and a full bodysuit stirring the hot dog water. What an elaborate stunt. Now it's time to do something I haven't done in a while, but it's funny newspaper headlines. Let's bring up the first one here. An Army vehicle disappears. An Australian Army vehicle worth $74,000 has gone missing after being painted with camouflage. Police are seeking that one. And then the next one is a man accused of killing lawyer receives a new attorney. Well, I'd be wearing a bulletproof vest to work with that man. And let's see. There's a mayor, Mayor Paris, and he says to homeless, he says, go home. Go home to your cardboard box under your bridge. And then there's one, this is going to require a little theater of the mind here, but there's a police composite of a criminal that has a tight ski mask on and dark glasses, and you can't tell anything about the guy, except maybe that, I don't know, that he looks Caucasian. And Mississippi's literacy program shows improvement, and they spell Mississippi wrong. And move on here. Let's see. And you've got to hand it to the newspapers. They have barely a few inches of space to cram in their huge attention-grabbing headlines, and not that much time to think of them either. As a result, in spite of the editorial process, many times you get some funny headlines slipping past the writers and editors. Get ready to laugh, because these are unintentionally funny newspaper headlines. And in this newspaper, it says, homicide victims rarely talk to police. Yeah, I would imagine that dead people rarely talk to police, or anybody else for that matter. And Utah Poison Control Center reminds everyone not to take poison. And don't eat Tide Pods. It's not a good deal as a YouTube gag. And then another headline here, we have most earthquake damage is caused by shaking. Yeah, I would imagine that would be true. Let's see. Waterford boy 8 saves sister's life. And the youngster used Heimlich, which he learned from TV. And then it says, I wouldn't do it again. She's been a pain. That's nice to say about your sister. She's been a pain this week. Federal agents raid gun shop, and they found weapons. Yeah, I can imagine they would. They found a Wilde Magnum. I might be interested, even though they're not available, not being made anymore. Statistics show that teen pregnancy drops off significantly after age 25. Yeah. And then there's one here. We have the city is unsure why the sewer smells. Well, I guess it could be the shit, I suppose. And an Alton attorney accidentally sues himself. And then also we have a man that eats underwear to beat breathalyzer. Now, I've heard of a lot of different ways to try to beat that. People that have batteries in their mouth and stuff like that. It just doesn't work. And then another headline is state prisons plan to replace easy open locks. Yeah, well, we hope that prisons don't typically place easy open locks on their doors. Let's see. Bugs flying around with wings are flying bugs. Yeah. And we have this one chick accuses some of her male colleagues of sexism. Is she a babe? I don't know. Another breaking news, local news we have here. It doesn't say what paper. A lot of these don't say what paper. They're just photos of the headlines. But dead body found in cemetery. Well, yep, a live one is, well, that would be good too. But if you found a hand digging up through the ground, that'd be a little freaky. But they did find a dead one found in the cemetery. Then we have the cop that makes an arrest in bathroom after smelling crack. And I wonder if he had to get up close and personal to do that. And then we have the parents that keep kids home to protest school closure. Yeah. And let's see. Next, we have the county to pay $250,000 to advertise lack of funds. Yeah, that's one way to have more lack of funds. And in the News and Observer, 17 people remain dead in morgue after shooting spree. Hey, I'm dead already. I don't care if I'm being shot. And then another deal here. Advertisers are not responsible for mistakes made by this publication. Oglethorpe schools change policy. Threat disrupts plans to meet about threats. And then we have the midget who sues a grocer, cites belittling remarks. And the term midget is kind of outdated. I think they use little people or I think that's about it on that.
Okay, Randy, and let's move on with the program at 105. I don't have all day.
Zira, at 105 years old, you may not have all hour. Well, the next item up for bids is a little bit bizarre. Oh, very bizarre, I guess you could say. And it's the access into the vampire court of Austin, Texas. A group of awakened vampires and otherkin inside the bizarre world of the real-life vampire king and queen who have fangs, drink blood, and are polyamorous, but hate twilight. They love drinking blood, hate sunshine, and are very kinky. Meet the young married couple who are by night transform into the vampire king and queen of Austin, Texas, where they are appointed leaders of a group of 60 self-professed vampires. Daly and Logan South are the king and queen of the vampire court in Austin. So if you're in the Texas area and you're a little lonely and want to join a club or something and get out, we got this vampire court in Austin, Texas. Every month, the Vampire Court of Austin meets at their private members club, a fetish venue about 15 minutes from central Austin, where they hold an official court meeting before relaxing with a drink or a little BDSM on their sex floor. Married couple Logan and Daly South founded the court around 6 years ago to provide a safe haven for all the city's awakened vampires and otherkin, which includes werewolves, fairies, and people who identify with animal spirits. They advise members who include security guards, property managers, ex-military, and actors on how to drink blood safely and shield themselves from psychic attacks. These psychic attacks are launched by so-called energy vampires who feed off people's positive energy in order to boost their own. It is said you can tell if you're suffering an attack by the way you feel when you're around them. Sometimes a sudden nausea or stomach ache or stabbing pains around the back and chest and shoulders. But these aren't the only group of role players. The members of the court truly believe that if they do not feed or they spend too long in the sun, they will become ill or even die. And Austin's vampires are not alone. One census estimated that there were 50,000 vampires in the U.S. at last count. That's a scary thought right there. 50,000? I wonder what census they're... who's taking that census? But they show a picture of the guy, and he's got the blazing green contacts in and got fangs for teeth, and his wife has Spock-like ears from Star Trek, and a bunch of tattoos. And then we go on to this. There are 3 main types of vampires, Queen Daly explains, identified by their main source of feeding, either blood, sex, or energy. Daly 30 told Sun Online, you got vampires who feed from blood, sanguine vampires, you got the vampires that feed directly from energy, psychic vampires, and you've also got vampires who feed sexually, not just from sex acts, but from energy of arousal. You also got vampires who feed from all 3. I awakened as a sanguinary blood feeder 15 years ago, but over the years I've learned to feed from all other methods as well. So now I only really need to feed from blood about once a month, and the rest of the time I feed from ambient energy in the room, or from a crowd, or from a donor I feel sexual energy from. If you stop feeding for an extended period of time, you're probably going to get sick. I actually know someone who had a heart condition and she stopped feeding for an extended period of time, and they told her she was going to die. She started feeding again and her heart condition disappeared. And we got some more people pictured here with fangs. Many of the court members wear fangs and brightly colored contact lenses. You saw that. Husband Logan says the court's preferred method of blood drinking is to use a lancet to prick the donor's finger, not to cut or slice people. A lancet is a simple tool, typically used by diabetics. Yes, I use them. He explained, you pull the end, you place it on the finger, and you press a button, and it creates a tiny little pin prick just right at the end of the finger, creating just enough blood flow for any vampire to get exactly what they need. I mean, sometimes you might have to do it 2 or 3 times, but it's very simple, very contained, and it heals up within a day. There's not a lot of exposure or risk. You don't want to go cutting into people with knives or anything unless you were a doctor. I wouldn't go cutting into places where you have veins and arteries that could be open and have someone bleed out just because you thought you were going to make a tiny nick in an area that you shouldn't have. Well, at least they're being somewhat safe with the bloodletting, I guess. And I've heard horror stories of people doing that kind of thing, and I think it's very important that we educated people on how to do that very safely. There's no reason to go cut and slice, and when you could just have a little tiny pinprick on the fingertip. That's the way it works for me. And more pictures of some rituals, I guess. Logan and Daly live on a ranch in Austin with their 3 wolf dogs, horses, goats, and Logan's girlfriend, a fellow vampire called Lana Lucia Westerna, who is also his blood donor. The couple has always had an open relationship. Well, isn't that convenient? With Daly having their own partners too, saying they broke down any notions of jealousy early on. Logan describes his wife as his twin flame and his girlfriend as his soulmate. Interesting there. Soulmate for his girlfriend. From the moment that we got together, we decided to have an open relationship, and then shortly after that, we decided to have a polyamorous relationship, which meant that not only could we play with other partners, but we could also love other people, and that would be perfectly fine, he said. We decided to break down any potential notions of jealousy early on and realized that the most important thing was that both of us were happy. Both of us were fulfilled, and we realized that we could be more fulfilled by having other people in our lives, both sexually and in a relationship. Yeah. Sounds like he's grooming people for a sex cult. I don't know. Who knows about that? But primarily the fulfillment was found in my particular case, having my girlfriend Alana, and the beauty that she brought into my life has definitely kind of filled my heart. So much for his wife, I guess. So what is a typical day like for a polyamorous Texan vampire king? Logan says he wakes up at about 6 p.m. Just as the sun is about to set, I'll eat breakfast and then I'll go and check the horses, goats, and my wolves. Then I'll do all the different things that I have to do for my business. I mostly work online or in a physical nightclub location or my fetish club Vampire. If it is a weekend or an event night, I'll go out, usually in a black tailored 3-piece suit, and then I'll go out and have a good time, and I'll make sure all my friends are having a good time. If there's no event, I'll go off with Daly and we'll go have lunch, watch some movie, or I'll go off with Lana and we'll play some video games. We're big comic book nerds and big video game nerds. Yeah, they're probably on Twitch or something. But occasionally we'll go out on our own on a night when we're feeling a little frisky. Maybe we'll go find some prey, as it were, whether that's just some cute young thing, male or female, any which way. Yeah. Little swing in there, it seems like. We like traveling a lot. We go to Denver, we go to New Orleans, LA, Hawaii, Romania. To be honest, my day is probably just like anybody else's, except for sometimes I might be having a little more fun than them. Oh, then there's more pictures of people with vampire teeth and looks like domination clothing or type thing. Emily Walker, 30, is the queen of a similar vampire court in Columbus, Georgia. And then there were June's meetings where a group of around 20 to 30 vampires, many wearing specially made fangs and brightly colored contact lenses, gathered to greet the king and queen. Once inside, the group took part in an energy shielding workshop where they learned how to protect themselves from psychic attacks. Then they cheered as one member, Tempest, was named as the new sheriff of the Vampire Court of Austin, vowing to put her own needs second to those of the court. The court then talked about the upcoming charity and community work, of which the court is very proud, including blood drives, feeding the homeless, and taking part in the upcoming Pride Parade. We do a lot of community outreach for the Austin community, Daly explained. A lot of that is not only to help the community, but is also removes the negative stigma that often surrounds vampire organizations. If they see a bunch of vampires out helping with the children's hospital, blood drives, things like that, then it gives people a more open mind as to who we are and what we're doing. Well, let me see. Do some good there. Daly said there's a lot of misconceptions about the vampire community, which is keen to dispel. She says people cannot be turned into a vampire. They do have a reflection. Many can eat garlic, but most are very sensitive to sunlight and prefer to be nocturnal. I would say the biggest misconception that we come into contact with a lot is the idea of turning, she said. You cannot be turned into a vampire. You were born a vampire and awaken later in life. It is not something that you can just turn into someone else into. As far as garlic, I've heard a lot of different theories. I personally love garlic. I think it's great. It's good for you. It's healthy. But I know a lot of vampires who have dietary issues, and garlic upsets their stomach. Whether or not that's related to them being a vampire, I wouldn't be able to say, but I have seen it quite a lot. It seems to be a half and half deal. Vampirism is not evil. It's not a religion. It's not something that you worship or decide to follow that path. It's just who you are. You can obviously pick whatever religion you want, but it's not an evil. It's not an evil thing. It's not, we're not going to walk into a church and burst into flame. A lot of us are Christian. A lot of us are Catholic. There's all sorts of faith. Thank God we can see ourselves in a mirror, because I don't know how I would have gotten ready today. That would have been terrible. We don't burst into flame from the sunlight, but it can make us very ill, very nauseous. A lot of people will actually spike a fever. Tremors, pass out, headaches, and things like that are very common. A lot of us are very nocturnal because of that. For those of us that have daytime jobs, that can be kind of difficult. And sometimes these vampires have to feed more and more often from a more intense energy source to keep themselves healthy. A lot of us have increased immune systems and increased healing abilities. I can heal a tattoo in 5 days, where the normal healing is 2 weeks. But we're not going to live forever. I may live longer than the average person, assuming I don't get hit by a car, as far as that goes. The only immortality that we believe in is what you leave behind. But Logan's love for all things vampire doesn't stretch to popular teen vampire movie Twilight. I would say I detest Twilight on a cellular level, he said. I absolutely abhor it. I think it is a disgusting film that glorifies an abusive stalker and does not in any way attribute itself to anything the vampires are, either in reality or in folklore and legend. This is kind of a farcical version of vampires that I don't appreciate. And that's the end of that story. That's bizarre. Very bizarre. It's just a lot of people wanting to belong to something that's funny they don't have a vampire dating website now. You can join up like eHarmony vampires or Matchmaker vampires or something like that. Sounds rather bizarre. I don't think I'd like the vampire teeth either. They kind of look like in their dress, look like they're ready to go out to a Renaissance festival or something. But that's that story. But now, by the looks of the clock on the wall, it's time to call Black Alert and Spore Drive this episode of Infotainment to the interwebs. You can tweet my Twitters at Randy Podcaster, my Facebook page at Infotainment, randyms12.blogspot.com, randyms12@gmail.com to email me, and whatever else. But thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you have a pleasant evening and a happy ending tomorrow. Bye-bye, folks.